She walked away from a six-figure career and built a movement that's healing women across Australia. What if burnout wasn't your breakdown, but an actual breakthrough? In this episode of Unleashed and Empowered, I sit down with Jeni Watson, the founder of Roaming Zen and the powerhouse that is bringing you the B class across the country. We go deep into how Jeni went from boardrooms and burnout to building a soul-led business that's transforming lives, one sacred class at the time. This isn't just about movement. It's about remembering who you are. It's about feminine leadership, unshakable vision, and having the courage to rewrite the script on your own terms. From dancing in vineyards to launching a national wellness road trip in 2025, Jeni is the living proof that when a woman follows her joy, she leads a revolution. So if there's a voice inside you whispering, "You are meant for more," let this be your sign. Welcome everyone to another episode of Unleashed and Empowered. And I have already told everyone that this episode was going to come up. We've got the beautiful Jeni here from Roaming Zen. I've actually been fangirling you for longer than what you can probably imagine, and we'll dive into why that is the case in just a second. But you're the founder of Roaming Zen. You're also the host of the B class here in Adelaide. And we had beautiful Tara on a couple of weeks ago and already started talking a little bit about B class. But today we're going to go deeper into it, what your inspiration was behind it, why you're so passionate about it, and then some of your plans for next year because they're very exciting. So welcome on the show, Jeni.
Oh, thank you so much, Alice. It's my first ever podcast, so this will be interesting for today.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that's easy. That's no problem at all. You can talk, I can talk, so we're all set. So the way that I start every podcast episode is with a little bit of a background story. I mean, I know a little bit about your corporate history. I know a little bit about how you got into movement. I know that was quite an early journey. We were talking about that last night during the class. And can I just say, it was an epic class. So thank you so much for leading that last night.
That's a pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about, where you come from, what you have done in your past life, what were some of those sliding door moments for you, and make it as long as you want.
I guess, where do I start? Like many people think that when they meet me for the first time, they say to me, when I tell them a little bit more about my backstory, they say, "Oh, we thought you would have been doing yoga since you were little." Well, maybe I was doing yoga since I was little. It was just in another guise. It was dancing. And last night I did share the story about how movement came into my life, and it came in, well, my mum always says that I must have come out dancing because I came out feet first and I was in a hurry. I was in a hurry to get here. I was a very early preemie baby in the 70s, and Mum said I was just ready to rock the Bee Gees. So feet first into the world, and ironically, it's always been my feet. I've always had really good feet in dancing, but they've also been my nemesis in my body, but that's for another day. But I found dancing, or ballet in particular, when I was 5. My best friend, Rebecca, my best school friend, she used to go and do ballet classes, and one afternoon her mum said to ask my mum whether I could come along to Rebecca's ballet classes because they weren't going home and it fell on a different day. And my mum said yes. And all I can remember is that I just fell in love with Miss Blyton. That was my ballet teacher. Had a big crush on her. I fell in love with all the pink tutus and all these beautiful dancing girls. And I joined in Rebecca's class in my school uniform. And I did feel a little bit out of place because I didn't have a pink tutu on. And I remember when I saw my mum tells the story of this bit. My mum says that I saw her at the shop, and I said, because my mum ran her own business, and my mum said that this 5-year-old little version of me says, well, Mummy, it's on Wednesdays and it's $5 a class and my pocket money's going to pay for it. So you don't have to pay for a thing. I've got all the money saved up. And I pretty much, all my pocket money that I ever earned from the age of 5 up until I stopped dancing in my late teens, I was about 18, 19 when I stopped dancing, was always, I didn't ask my mum for any money. It was all generated from my little tiny side hustle jobs that I had. So I was quite industrious from a young age and making money to feed the thing that brought me joy. And my mum says this now to this day in my forever 37 era that I'm in. My mum says to me, Jeni, you're the most joyful and the happiest when you're dancing. And she's right. So I did put my dancing shoes up for a number of years. I tried doing, I paid for myself through full-time dance school, and I also had another part-time job working in the retail industry. I worked in the health food industry, and the retail career kind of took over, and earning money and being self-sustainable kind of did take over. We lived out in the western suburbs of Sydney near the Blue Mountains, so commuting into town, my job was in town, kind of drew me to then think I need to move out of home, because commuting 75 minutes a day into my work every day was getting a bit of a drag. So I moved out of home, and moved out of home earlier. I think I was 17, but my mum was all very supportive of that. I was dancing part-time, working almost full-time, supporting all of that, and the retail job and the career kind of took over. So at the age of 19, I was managing my first retail store. And I think what I really loved, and this was working for a health food company back in the 80s, and I think what got me into the place of where I sort of am leaning into now was the very first training course that I did. It was called Caring for Customers. Sounds very 80s. Actually,
It
late
does.
80s,
But
early
hey,
90s.
it says exactly what it promises, doesn't it?
Definitely. And I fell in love with that whole philosophy about, and I don't think it was, at that time it wasn't, well, training was everything that you did. You didn't actually ever hit the shop floor until you'd spent 5 days doing your training. That today's unheard of. You train on the job and, yep, see you later. Can you add up? Can you use a computer? Great, off you go. See you at the end of the shift, sort of thing is what happens now. But 5 days of learning all about how to really care for the human being that's standing right in front of you. And obviously in the health food industry, in the late 80s, the health food industry was huge back then. Well, it still is now, but it was kind of a thing. It was coming out of the 70s and the 80s. There was still quite a strong, it was very hippie back then, I have to almost say. But I'd grown up in a health food store, so being in that world just kind of seemed like a natural thing for me. And, you know, when people come into a health food store, they're often coming in because they're wanting to find an alternative way to be able to bring health into their bodies. And, you know, I was working in Glebe in the sort of, I think it's the western part of Sydney.
Yeah.
And I got to meet some fantastic people. Even Peter Garrett used to shop in there, and I remember him once. I was the checkout operator, and I was the best checkout operator ever. I really, I took pride in making sure that the people that that final piece of the service puzzle for them was the most magical piece. So when they walked out, that was the thing that they remembered. And just saying those words just then, that's a little bit like the Shavasana at the end of a B class or at the end of a movement class. The way people leave is ultimately the way that you want them. You want them to leave feeling, feel seen, to feel heard, to feel held in that space. And I guess now I kind of look back in reflection, I've been doing that since I was little.
Yeah, wow.
And that essence from that very first job of really caring for people that are in your space, whether you're one of my jobs was to look after all the bulk foods area and the peanut butter machine. And I took such pride in making sure that that space was taken care of, that there was heart in that peanut butter that I made. Um, yeah, so you bought peanut butter from me back in the 80s. It was really special peanut butter. Didn't have anything green in it, of course, but it had my full and utter presence and attention.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I was promoted more to being a manager and running my own stores, that really was the essence of what I brought into the stores that I managed, with the people that I managed. And I just kind of fell in love with working with teams. I fell in love with, through my leadership, having success in those businesses, in turning businesses around. And a lot of what I would turn around was around the people and the culture. And I don't know where that essence came from within me. I don't know. It's just been a big part of what makes my DNA. I'm sure human design would tell us why that's in me. Yes, and then fast forward a 25-year career. So from Russell's, I then moved to Adelaide. Russell's was in Sydney, moved to Adelaide. My first job here in Adelaide was at Country Road as a store manager. And I remember applying for that job and thinking, gosh, I've only worked in health foods. What do I know about fashion? And the lady that interviewed me at the time, she said, I will always remember her saying when she rang to offer me the job, because I had two jobs on the table that I could have said yes to. And she says to me, you haven't got the fashion retail that we're looking for, but you've got the people skills and the leadership that we're looking for. And I was waiting for the and. And then the and was, I'm going to take a risk on you.
Wow.
I don't know whether that was a sort of the thing that I think we must have just said those sorts of things. We were quite candid in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he took a risk on me, and that risk of that job as a store manager in Unley was the springboard. Was the springboard the right word?
Yeah. Springboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it basically sprung me into a 15-year career with Country Road. So from store manager to cluster manager to regional manager to starting Country Road in South Africa, being the person that put her hand up and said, yes, I'll take that opportunity. And my husband's like, hell yes, we can do, he with his business he can work anywhere in the world. And that's an experience for another day. But people have always been at the heart of everything that I've done. And like all of us, we have the turning point. So I guess I could continue going. It is a very long story. But then from Country Road to other brands, dipped my toe in the fast-moving consumer goods area for a little while. Rolled out a fashion brand within a supermarket chain. That was interesting. And then moved into supermarkets, working in the shop floor. And then eventually it was my body waking up in ill health that made me take that. I think sometimes we don't listen to our bodies well enough when we're knee deep in the trenches, or not so much the trenches, but we're just knee deep and focused on building a career in our 30s, our 20s and our 30s. And it was almost like turning 40 was that time where my body just woke up and literally screamed at me. And it was what sometimes can feel like a curse was actually a blessing, of it gifting me with an autoimmune condition that if I didn't actually do something about that, I probably would be in a wheelchair today.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that made this huge shift of, well, I need to get some balance back into my life. And that balance came in the form of stepping away from a 6-figure role And for me, I've always placed really high expectations upon how I deliver things, and my standards are high. Sometimes my teams would say, Jeni, you have such high standards. And I'm like, well, the standard that we walk past is the standard that we accept. So do we accept that standard? And most of the time, the answer is no. It's, well, how can we work on lifting it to a standard that we can all accept? Yeah, that's a Margaretism from my mum. Margaret Wisdom. And so I stepped away from a job that was very stressful, but I look back at it at that time, and it was a job that I needed to do to be able to be where I am today. Went back full circle and went and worked for the most inspirational leader I've ever worked with in my career, Sue from Gazman, and went back into fashion retail and worked for Sue. And took a big step back, became more creative. I had a creative role with that business, and that brought me back to myself. It's amazing when you take yourself out of an environment that's really quite stressful, or where it's difficult for you to manage stress, to step away from that, what that physically does in the body. And I felt then that I had a bit more wriggle room, a bit more breathing room. Yeah. And I did a bar class. Like, I had not exercised for such a long time. I've stopped dancing at the age of 22, and then literally dabbled a little bit in running, God forbid, cycling, fell in love with my husband that way. So I did cycle quite a bit, but there was like a different agenda there. I had to cycle to keep up with him, to chase him. And I'm sure we've all been at this point in our lives where on the 1st of January set this new resolution. Well, year I'm going to eat better, I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to lose weight. I have not met a woman that really doesn't struggle or be challenged in that. And there was a lot more of me back then. Ollie would always say to me, I love all of you, Jeni, doesn't matter. I love all of you. And yes, so I did my very first bar class, and I'd read about it. It was around the time when Black Swan, the movie with Natalie Portman, was really big.
Yeah.
And I'd read all this stuff in the magazines, like an old-fashioned magazine. None of that was on the internet back then. So much. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll give bar a go. Like, I dabbled with Pilates, and I kind of enjoyed Pilates, but I just felt that it wasn't quite dynamic enough. And so I went and did my very first bar class, and I remember wearing, didn't have tights, so I wore like tracky dacks and a big floppy T-shirt, and I wasn't proud of how my body was at that time. So at that time I was probably a size 14 or size 16, and I was an inflammatory mess with my autoimmune disease. But I felt like I had like the mojo and the space in my week to investigate getting moving again. I did that first bar class. I stood at the back like most women that, when I ran my own studio, most women would stand at the back for their very first class and feel really sheepish, and you can kind of read that they're feeling really unsure about their bodies and uncomfortable. And what I loved about it is that it was taught by the most beautiful teacher. I mean, she was a Latin American dancer, so she moves so beautifully. But what it was is bar just kind of took me back to those ballet classes that I did when I was little, to music that had a great pace to it. It was dynamic. The movement felt familiar. It was almost like my body just went, thank you.
I remember
all of this. Ollie's workplace was just around the corner, and I came back to his workplace and he said, how was class? And I said, oh my God, it was amazing. I want to do more. And he said, and I think it was that point that Ollie just said, I'll pay for a membership for you.
Wow.
And that 1 bar class then moved into 5 classes a week, moved into a little bit of an obsession because I just loved it so much. But the other thing, Alice, is I actually wasn't in a job where I was starting at 7 or 6 a.m. in the morning and finishing at 12 o'clock at night, which was the job that I was in when I was just working. I was on that treadmill and I didn't know how to get off it. And so the body waking up and screaming at me saying, if you don't do anything now, I'm going to
That's it.
give you this disease to make you wake up. So those that are listening and listening to this podcast, if you're in that moment now and your body is screaming, just take the moment just to listen, because it's telling you to make a change. Don't ignore it. So it became an obsession. I got told, I tapped on the shoulder of like, oh, Jeni, would you like to become a bar teacher? And I don't know, when you find the thing, and I said yes to that, naturally, I'm like, yes, of course. And I'd built up this beautiful group of friends around that movement. And, you know, hey presto, they were all in my very first bar class that I taught. And I think it was from that moment there that it kind of pulled back not just the physical sensation of moving, but being part of a community that is as passionate about a similar thing. So everyone was passionate about feeling good about themselves, passionate about moving. And I just started to feel like there was something here. And I remember Sue, my dear boss at Gazman and also at Country Road, she remembers when she first met me, she said, Jeni, what have you always wanted to do with your life? And I said, oh, when I was little, I really wanted to open up a dance school or a ballet studio or something. And so from becoming a bar teacher to I did my yoga teacher training, did my 200 and then my 350 hours and then more training. And then I did Pilates. And Sue had taught me 2 things. The best thing you can do is continue to learn throughout your career to always get more and more tools in your toolbox so you're able to do a little bit of everything and then attune to what your speciality is. Because then that gives you a taste, but it also makes you so much more employable.
Oh, what beautiful advice.
And she also used to say to me that you're my only manager that is a master of many, many talents, and you're my most well-rounded regional manager that I have in the business. And I used to say to her back then, I hope you're not talking about my waistline. She said, of course not, Jeni. Look at us. We're both approaching our perimenopausal times. You know, get over yourself, she used to say. You're beautiful. But I loved that compliment that she used to say to me often. You're my most well-rounded manager. You have so many talents in many aspects. And that advice from Sue, I took that then into my own business, which kind of calls me back to Sue saying, when I first met you, I asked you that question, what is it that you've always wanted to do with your life? And I said to her, well, when I was little, excuse me, I've got fluff in my nose, I wanted to open my own ballet school. So when she saw me starting to study more, I went from 5 days a week to 4 days a week to 3 days a week. And she said, you're going to leave me, aren't you? And I said, maybe. And then in 2017, I had an opportunity to purchase one of the studios that I was working at. And then Sue said to me, I've never met anyone who has made their childhood dream come true. And she said, it may not be a ballet studio, but a yoga studio is really close, and I'm proud of you.
Oh, that makes me emotional.
I know.
That is so beautiful.
And she, I mean, if you're watching this later and you have the opportunity to work for Sue, she is one of the best leaders that I ever had in my career, and I really see her as quite a strong mentor and beautiful human being. So
Wow.
So yes, and then 2017, I bought a studio and started Roaming Zen, but it had kind of percolated back in 2016, where it started with my very first event, and our anniversary will be next year. So, when people ask me, how old is your business? Well, it's nearly 10 since we registered that name. So Roaming Zen began in the vineyards, and it was yoga and wine. And many folk would say, oh, but you can't have those two together. And I say, well, we don't actually combine the two together in its physicalness. We keep them quite separate. So we have the yoga practice first, and it's more of an honor and an appreciation of being able to practice the practice of yoga in some incredible spaces that you wouldn't normally be able to practice in. And then the alignment with the vineyards and the places that I've worked with, where there is a strong sense of place, sense of land, of renewal, of putting back into the earth. So it's not just any vineyard that I kind of pair with. I'm working on a beautiful collaboration at the moment with Ondine up at Hunt, at Verdun,
But
and talking to the owner, Deb, this week. We're really excited about pulling together this respect for permanent country and working on activities on how we can pull the land into the practice. It's
love
not
that.
just I teach yoga and then we drink wine. It is a whole experience. And
Wow.
that's how my business started. And so that experience piece is just woven into everything I do. That's
Wow.
a long way to get to where we wanted to be, but that's
No,
kind of
I
me in
love
a
that. Thank you
nutshell.
so much for diving so deep into that.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say, take as much or as little time and go as deep or as shallow as you like. So thank you so much for that deep dive. There's a couple of things that I want to touch on. I hope I remember them all. So bear with me for a moment. First of all, your very first training experience. I had a very similar experience with my manager over in Germany when I was working for an international pharmaceutical company. And that changed my life because that was the moment when we started reading Good to Great, Who Moved My Cheese,
Ah,
the first introduction into values, into
yes,
culture.
yes.
That was a pivotal moment in my life. So I can totally appreciate what you've sort of said there. The other thing was the autoimmune disorder. Same thing for me. I think we had talked about that privately a couple of times. I was diagnosed with psoriasis when I was not in pharmaceuticals. No, sorry, I was in medical devices at the time. And a couple of years prior, I had actually written the patient program for one of the drugs that I would have eventually ended up on, where I knew what the progression of the disease looked like. And I just said to myself, no, my body is talking to me. I was seeing a dermatologist at the time. She said, well, this is what will happen. And I said to her, no, this is not what's got to happen because I choose now to listen to my body and to honor my body and see what it needs from me. And that sort of then rolled out a very big self-discovery process, obviously getting out of the corporate world, starting my own business. And this is where I started fangirling you because the first business that I had was Retreat a Little. And
Yes.
I was partnering with people at the time. And so I had started following quite a few people in the Adelaide area that I wanted to partner with in that retreats business. Because I always said I was the dreamer of the dream, but then I was going to pull people in that had the expertise that I didn't have
Yeah.
to help me execute on the dream. So you were very high on that list because obviously you have always done the yoga with the wine. You have done some other really beautiful events. Whenever I tried to come to one of your events, they were always sold out, or I was too late in discovering them. And so when we then eventually met, it was like, oh, of course I was drawn to you because of your beautiful energy, because of what you're doing, the communities that you're building, everything that you're about. And it's just beautiful to see how there are certain themes that have obviously woven through your life. And whether it was in a corporate world or whether it was in your own business, there was just this evolving of the themes of the movement, the reminder of how important movement is, and then also how important it is to really nurture and care for the people. And I think that's why you have created such a successful business and such a big following,
Mm.
because you truly care about the person that walks through that door.
Yeah. And like it's even before the door, Alice. So
Yes.
it's from the what is the experience like? And we all have areas of opportunity within our businesses and within ourselves. Like that's how we learn. So, my husband and I will often have these quite, we call them the Chardonnay conversations sometimes on the weekends when we're like, yeah, this business, and if they had just done this, like, oh, and we have these, they get quite, we get quite animated and just, it's really simple just to think, okay, I'm here as a human being, so how would I want to be treated if I walk into that business
Yeah.
or into that environment or into that studio? And I think one of the things that I really prided myself on in the creation of Roaming Zen, the studio space, like I never meant to open up a studio. That was the childhood dream. But if you dream it, it'll happen. That was the childhood dream, but it wasn't really part of the vision that I'd written for Roaming Zen. So I'd written down in the back of one of my lesson plan books the 10-year plan, the 5-year plan, and the 1 and the 2. And like by 3 years, I wanted to be known in the space for holding really wholesome, soul enriching events that people wanted to come to. So rather than me going out seeking businesses to collaborate with, people were reaching out to me. So 4 years in, that happened, but that started to happen, which was awesome, and it's still now happening. But what was when I had the opportunity to take on one of the studios that I was working at, it was like, well, how can I make this really feel like a second home for me? That bar studio and that I used to practice at as a student became my second home. Like Ollie started to even label the bins of the name of the business that I was doing bar with, because I'd get home and there would be extend the bins, because I was always at Extend Bar doing bar classes. So when I had the opportunity to, because it was my second home, I was either at home at Extend Bar, which was the bar studio I did classes with, or I was at work. But it had a beautiful equal balance between the three. And so when I had the opportunity to rebrand the studio, Ollie and Ollie's cheekiness created this beautiful mural on one of the big long walls that looks like the view that we have at home,
Oh, wow.
because he just knew that this was going to be the studio, and he wanted to make that feel like my second home, but also just to take the community that were coming and visiting that studio on the journey of Jen, really. We had rugs. There were no rugs in the space before, but we put a rug down and then brought in this beautiful coffee table, which is made from a piece of New Caledonian pine that my grandmother, well, the story is that there were these New Caledonian pines that were planted in Parramatta Park when my nana was a little girl
Oh,
on
wow.
Arbor Day. And we found years later, my first husband, Alan, he went to the wood mill. He wanted to make a coffee table. And he said, oh, I've just bought this beautiful piece of New Caledonian pine. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Where did they get that? And I said, they've just chopped down the trees in Parramatta Park. And my nana said, I planted those trees when I was a little girl. How dare they chop
Wow.
those trees down? So that coffee table was in Roaming Zen. So for me, there was an essence of my nana there.
Oh, how
So
beautiful.
so we had lots of timber in there and rugs and beautiful comfy couches, and it was warm. There was always tea was always on the brew. So it was like making, and before the studio it had this like a countertop. It felt very like you were going to see the doctor. But we got rid of that, took that out, recycled that in the back kitchen, and opened up the whole space. So when you walked in, there was no barrier. And
Mm.
that for me was pulling in something from my retail days, is when a customer comes into your store or into your space, it's like you're welcoming them into your home.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how people they will remember what you've said, but what were the words that you said and how did it make you feel?
Mm.
And so people start engaging with you, and like all my retail stuff just is like second nature now. So when people start engaging with your brand, once they look at it on your website, once they look into your windows, then they come in and they feel the energy within the space. And if they can see what's written on your website is actually coming to life within the space, wherever your business is, then like, wow, you're doing your job really well. And then you have the people. So that's what I'd created in my studio. And many of the community, now that the studio's now moved more into virtual community space, they say we really miss that feeling. We'd walk in and
Mm.
we go, this feels like home.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell them that. The space did that.
Yeah.
But it was part of my vision. So can we make that vision come alive within that space?
Wow.
And I kind of don't know how I even got into that, but how do we get to there? See, this is
I
what
don't know.
happens.
I don't know. So, well, this is the great thing that happens on podcasts is you just end up on some tangent, and this is the great thing why I don't script those podcasts, because if we
Yeah,
scripted everything out, then we would
yeah,
never go into those little side stories that are so important. But what it helps me now to understand is the reason why Roaming Zen had such a big following and still has such a big following. Obviously, the world changed after you had opened up the Roaming Zen studio, so there was a need to then take that virtual. Otherwise, the
yeah.
business would have probably collapsed in itself. But it now helps me also to understand with the studios that you have gone into to teach other classes for those existing communities on why you have that ability to just very quickly observe what can be improved, what can be changed, how communities can be pulled in a different way, how the space can be upgraded to make it feel more welcoming. And yeah, now I understand why that new journey that you're going to talk about today as well
Yeah.
makes so much sense.
And I think it's a lost. I think I'm seeing more and more. Like you look at the most successful, like one of the studios that I practice at, and I've leaned more into practicing virtually with them now. But I've been practicing with an Adelaide-based yoga studio since they opened in 2016, Humankind in Adelaide,
Mm.
and it just feels like my home when I walk in there. There's the genuine hello. There's
Yeah.
when you walk up to the desk, it's not like it's how can we help.
Yeah.
It is all for the customer, all for the human being, and whether that. I mean, we were taught some really foundational standards back in the day that I think get lost. They just get lost in the rush, or there's so many reasons why onboarding
Mm.
of someone into your business can get lost in translation, because there's always a role to fill and everyone's so busy, and when you go to train someone else it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take a whole day out of my normal day that I'm doing. Like I understand all of those things. But I see in this particular studio that everyone has been inducted the same way. Like there is not a single member in that team,
Mm.
and I have been really proud of this in all the spaces that or in the roles where I've had that influence to be able to influence culture, whether
Yeah.
that be in my corporate roles with Country Road, with Gazman, and even with Coles. Some of the the jobs, the tasks, the things that were tasked upon me when I worked for Coles as a store manager for that short time was to change culture. And in that environment, that's really challenging. But even if you can just change the culture of one section of that business, that can and does have a ripple effect. And then you get that right, then you move into the next one and pull them together, and the next one and pull them together. I think sometimes I miss having that. But then it also exhausts me just thinking about how much it exhausted me back then. But it's about coaching that next. So it's not about, for me, the transition now is not about me being the main driver of that in a business anymore. It's about being part of coaching and mentoring the next generation of leaders.
Yeah.
And right now, being in the movement space, I see there is a huge opportunity. We've got Pilates instructors that are coming out of training so quickly, like because Pilates is in demand. So you go and do your weekend course, or maybe it's like 6 weeks. You learn all the repertoire. You learn a little bit on how to teach, a little bit. So repertoire this, how to actually build rapport and relationships with people. That's like a little tiny bit. And then you're in a studio space, it's like, yep, we've got to cover a class. So, yep, you get given your first class. And that's where I would come in to help mentor, or to mentor that new teacher on how they can actually hold space, particularly if they're in a room full of, people that have probably done Pilates for a long time, or they're older than you. But if you can just hold space for a group of human beings and say, hey, here we go, let's do this. Because at that time, at that point in time, in that moment, you have more knowledge about Pilates than some of the folk that are on the mats. So own that space. And that's what gets me excited, is working with, whether that be new yoga teachers, new Pilates teachers, or, I have such a beautiful privilege at the moment to be part of the next 4 B class leaders that we're training at the moment to empower them to actually develop and to grow and to blossom into the teacher or into the leader that they truly can be. One of the best things I did when I'd done my yoga teacher training was find a mentor. That wasn't within my organisation, that was completely outside of the studio I taught at. And I learnt so much by having that person in my corner, supporting
Yeah.
me, coaching me, mentoring
Yeah.
me. And I recommend that for all teachers that are coming straight out of
Really
any
anyone,
kind of
to be
teacher
honest with
training.
you, because,
Pardon?
it's really for anyone who
Ah,
does anything. Like in corporate, the whole mentorship program was so underutilized and
mm,
not heard of and not spoken of. And I wish that I had the courage earlier on to actually seek mentorship, because we all have blind spots, and there is always things that we don't see, where we're just being us. And so I think it's just good to have somebody who can hold up that mirror for you and say, you could lean into that more, you could explore that more, or be
mm.
careful of that.
Yeah.
I would not go anymore without some form of coach in my life,
Mm,
because it just propels you forward at such a exponential rate,
mm.
compared to what you would be able to do by yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
100%
let's
agree with
face
that
it,
one.
not very many senior managers, not many line managers, A, have the time. They've often been promoted because they were really good at what they did.
100%.
And then it's really interesting watching the journey of, being an observer. Sometimes someone will be promoted because they were the best salesperson, put them in a leadership role, and they then are no longer the best salesperson, and they're not happy.
Hmm.
So they were
Yep.
promoted to something that the business thought that they wanted, but then it was actually the worst thing,
Yeah.
or they
Yeah.
didn't
And then
provide
you
them
have
with
no
this.
ability to go back anymore these days.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you just,
yeah,
break down your career very, very quickly. Yeah.
yeah,
I have seen that over and over again.
yeah. So yes, there's definitely there's the path down that road for me. And just recently, I've kind of been, I think I've been really led to write a lot more about heart-led leadership, because it is really about tapping into presence as a leader, to doing things that bring you joy, definitely. There's the one thing I've always loved about coaching and leading and not managing people. Like, managing is, I think, if you manage a task, it's about leadership, about being part of really developing someone's career path.
Yeah.
Some of my proudest moments are, there's a young boy that I hired as a checkout operator in Country Road, Woolworths, South Africa. In that in that experience that I had of, I was the person that Country Road sent overseas to work with Woolworths South Africa to roll out 4 pilot stores which was Country Road within the Woolworths, which is nothing like Woolworths
Wow.
Australia. Within, you would remember Woolies from. Are you from?
No,
Yeah,
we
I
di we
often.
didn't have it. No, Germany doesn't have,
No, I often get
well, it
your
does have,
accent.
yeah, it has a form of Woolies, but not
Yeah.
not in that way, I believe. No.
Yeah, I sometimes get your accent mixed up with a little bit of a South African accent.
I know.
Must be
I've
the
never
German
been.
in
This
me.
is so
No,
random as well.
we must go. So yes, like the Sainsbury model, I guess. Anyway, it doesn't. Marks and Spencer is very similar to the Marks and
Yeah.
Spencer model. Anyway, I hired this beautiful young man for a checkout operator, and he had worked as a checkout operator. And the proudest thing that I have is, like, I remember his very first day. We'd set up all the stores, and he says, "Hi, I'm Rossi, and I'm ready to help." And he was so proud of being a checkout operator. So it doesn't, and it takes me back to another book of our era in similar vein to Who Moved the Cheese, called The Fred Factor. And pop that down in the notes as a resource to Google The Fred Factor if it's still in print. It's a fabulous story about a gentleman, true story, in America, about a guy that used to work for the at American Postal Service. And he just made that job as simple as it sounds. It's not very glamorous, but he made it his mission in life to be the best postal delivery person for the American Postal Service. And he did it by being friendly, engaging, getting to know his customers, getting to know the neighborhood. He would know, well, it probably could be misinterpreted these days, but he'd know when people would be away. And so he would get the postal service to hang on to their mail before he would deliver it. Or,
Oh, wow.
he went above and beyond. And that's the whole thing about what we do. If we just go above and beyond in the element of service, we can't go wrong, really.
And guess what?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence will never be able to replace that.
Correct. They will never have the isms that I have.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
so back to Rossi, like, that was in 2009. And then I remember him sending me a message through LinkedIn, and because we're friends, we're acquainted. Oh, what do we call ourselves? We follow each other on LinkedIn.
Connections?
Connections, thank you. And I remember him sending me a message saying, "Jan, I just have you to thank." Like, this would have been 2015, 2016. So we're talking a long time later. And he says, "I just want you to know that if it wasn't for you taking a chance and hiring me, I would not now be the regional manager for, I think it's Markham, it's a big fashion brand that's in South Africa. And he's now the
Wow.
regional manager and looks after, he works on a piece around, his passion is around people and equity and social equity and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
diversity. He
yeah.
works
Yeah,
on that
gotcha.
piece. So people were always his passion, and now he's taken all of his retail experiences. He was with Woolies for, I think, about 8 years, and now he's working with Markham and he's got this fantastic job working with them. And he says, if you hadn't have taken that chance on me and believed in my ability, I wouldn't be where I am now. And he says, I still am grateful to you today. And I remember one of another wisdom from Sue is when you are in a role of leadership, you want people, remember, think about what you want people to be writing about you at your eulogy.
Yeah.
What do you want them to say? And I always have wanted to have it that people will have me down as a reference on their resume, and for them to say, when I worked for Jeni, it was one of the best experiences that I had. So whether you're
Good luck
selling
replicating that.
service, pardon? What was
Good luck
that?
replicating that to the future boss.
Oh my gosh. But then again, that's just us sitting back and going, having that level of reflection to go, well, I have an opportunity in a leadership role, or even as a teacher, as a Pilates teacher or yoga teacher, you have a role as leading those people on how you impact their lives.
You can change their lives,
You
absolutely,
can
because that's the
change their
thing. We
lives.
just we just never know in which way we can change somebody's lives through being of service, and whether
Yeah.
that is being of service in our personal lives or in our professional lives. And that's always what Stephen said as well. He said, just give freely. When it comes to human design, just give freely, because you just never know who comes to you with whatever they have just gone through in their life, where they just need a little bit of a lifeline and a little bit of a lighthouse that makes them believe in themselves again, where they have that courage to just take that next step. And he says that's something that money will never, like, you can never pay for that, if that makes sense. So whatever balance you have on your P&L in your business, that's just never replaceable if you have the ability to change someone's life.
Yeah.
So because of your leadership experience, which obviously is so dominant in what you are doing and what you're passionate about, how do you think you have been able to find that balance between the intellect? Because all of us, we love using our brain, we love strategizing, but how do you then connect the brain with the heart, which is, I think, where all the magic sits and where all the magic happens? And,
Yes.
my Reiki healers always say, Alice, get out of your brain and get into your heart, and everything is just going to roll out like a magic red carpet. I'm like, but I think I'm doing it. And then I'm like, oh, stop thinking though.
Yeah. I think where that's kind of starting to land in a big way and has kind of landed quite heavy for this year was, I can have all this stuff in my head of what I want to do, but if I don't actually do anything with it, then it's never going to happen. And so when I was on retreat early this year in February, I was talking to one of the guests who works he works on strategy for the government, and we were talking about dreams and what we kind of want to do, and he said, your dream of what you want to do, you need to just do that. You've got the community behind you, you've got the energy, you now have your business in a way that you can take it on the road. And I think when I'm very relaxed and I'm not in having to stare at a computer, a lot of my life and the way that I talk starts to kind of, I tend to refer to, oh, there's a lyric for that in a B class song. We haven't even talked about the B class yet.
No.
And when I was at rest, like when we're truly rested, it's really interesting how the things that just light you up the most start to take over the conversation. And I did close the studio back in 2023, and that was for a number of reasons, but the biggest one was I literally just was burnt out. And one of my teachers, the gorgeous Beck Fletcher, I remember when she came and started to work for me, she said, Jeni, I look at my energy as just as important as currency. And that statement had stuck with me. So when I had made my lease was coming up for its next round, and my husband and I, Ollie and I, had a good conversation about it. And he said, he's the one that signs on the dotted line. Or we kind of would both. It was a co-led decision, but literally we just really wanted to be able to spend more time together.
Mm.
And my energy bank, I needed, and it was just, I think it's all about timing, really. So if the stars were aligning, the lease was about up for another renewal, and the decision was it's either now or never. And so
100%.
now was to make a decision to do something different, to transition that community into another space so they could all stay together. I couldn't, it would break my, would have, it was going to break my heart by just closing the doors and saying, see you, bye.
Yeah.
So at that time, we negotiated quite a graceful way of moving them in with another studio that was just down the road from Roaming Zen. And that's been a nice transition for the community to move across, and then for me to start to moving into where things lead to next. And we've always wanted to travel around Australia, and Ollie can do that. And one of the other things that was, the B class came to me with Vienna, bringing that to my studio, and Roaming Zen, and that was the very first class. I fell in love with that. And I think what the B class did for me is it definitely just lit me up into the heart of what the next journey is going to be. And all of the messages in those lyrics, like don't be so hard on yourself. And if you, what were the lyrics in that song last night? If you don't like girls that are stronger than you, and if you don't like girls that are faster than you, and if you don't like girls that are smarter than you, then you might not like me. All of those messages are just so like, well, just let me, I just need to be me.
Yeah.
And I would never actually say those words to anyone. I just like to dance to them every now and again.
And sing along.
And
That's
sing
perfectly
along.
appropriate.
Perfectly appropriate. But, it's about time that we took a risk and made this dream that we've had together as a couple. I mean, Ollie just said the other night, he said, for the whole time that we've been together, you've never really been home. Like we get to, and you never, and when you were working in corporate, I never really saw you because you were always traveling
Yeah.
with your job. And then when we did the studio, you were there 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And now we're here, like now's our opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
And one thing that Tara and Vienna and I, like we've been wanting to get the brand to more places and to more spaces, but you can't take a brand to more spaces by standing still. And so when I was in Byron Bay, this friend that I met up there, he said, well, the only way you're going to do it, Jeni, is to make that dream that's percolating deep inside of you, to make that real. What's the first thing that you need to do? You've got a virtual community, you've got a community, get them to come on the road with you. And so then we started to build this, just on the back of our journals, we just started to write down what this vision looked like. And that's when I sent you, Alice, can you put this into the human design thing and just ask her whether this is like the right thing, and like, bam. And so when we open ourselves up to space and time, and you'd think after practicing yoga for more than 10 years that I would, kind of have gotten this, but that's why it's called a practice, not a bloody perfect. That I kind of would have got that. But I feel really, really, really drawn to that's the next thing for Roaming Zen. Another one of my clients, beautiful Robin, has said, well, you've just put the Rome back into Roaming Zen. That's in your name. The answers are in the bloody name of your business, girl.
Wow.
You're not meant to stay still.
Yeah.
And so that's where the heart of this journey starts now. Like it's this evolution. Like I see for roaming Zen to roam, we need to not be attached to anything.
Mm. And you know what it also allows people to do is it gives everyone the permission to act on their dreams.
Ah,
Because by you saying, okay, I'm going to leave the familiar, I'm going to leave the safe space that I have created, and I'm going to throw all the balls up in the air and I see how this is all going to pan out. And we always know that, you know, when you surrender and when you let go, the universe just takes over and has this beautiful plan that you could have never orchestrated yourself in your wildest dreams.
mm,
But it gives everyone else the opportunity to say, okay, well, which area of my life do I have to reevaluate where I'm not true to myself, where have I not stepped into that next version of myself, where have I not yet honored my dream? So
mm,
I love everything that you're doing with Roaming Zen, how you're taking the B class on the road next year.
mm.
For those that have listened to Tara's episode, we're already planning retreats in Byron Bay where we're going to come and visit
Yes,
you in other parts
totally.
of Australia.
Mm,
Because as you say, you know, there is communities out there that don't have the luxury of moving together because they don't have the instructors or yeah, there is just no opportunity for them. And it's great that we have virtual. I love virtual, but coming together in a physical space, nothing beats that as well. The physical human connection, the hugs that you can get from everyone when you're there, the warmth that you feel,
yeah.
that is something different. So I'm really excited about you taking the B class around Australia, us being
Mm,
able to follow you on that journey as well, and
yeah.
sort of the surprise around, well, where is she going to teach from today? What's the
Mm,
background going to be? And is your
yeah,
dog going to be joining the program as well? Who
totally.
knows?
Yeah. So yes, so that I mean that's what I said to Tara. The only way that we're going to be able to get this brand across the country is as if we go on a road trip. And so, you know, the invitation will be, I think we're planning to go February, March next year. That's the plan. And we'll do it in and we'll do it in stages, not like be away for the whole time. Because we need to come back and check in on the property and do all of those sorts of things. And my mum, so make sure that it hasn't all overgrown. But part of it will be just to do it in clover leaves. Come back, refuel, reconnect,
Mm,
and then go again. And the B class, I see how much it has helped me. Like Tara has created a method that deserves to be shared with
yeah,
so many more people. And the way that it grew in Canada can be the way that it grows here. And the way that it grew in Canada was just one class here, and then everyone it was the ripple effect. So that's so it's building a movement around the B class, but it's also just building a movement around yoga in great places, taking people on the journey with us. I've had even some members of the community say, well, make sure you share the itinerary so we can come and meet you. Um,
absolutely.
and and that also that third piece is a dream turned into reality for the two of us. And yes, Scout will be coming along. We've got to work out on how to get him into the camper, but yes, so I think I've not actually verbalized these words to him. He's sitting over there working in the corner with his earbuds in. But I think for him, I've been so absent.
Mm,
This is my way of also giving back to the relationship too, is for um, for us to be able to spend that time with each other, because you don't yeah, the spending time with the people that mean so much to you, that have taken care of you when you weren't even able to take care of yourself. That's the most, and they're the people that you need to give back to.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And what's really interesting when you do go on a road trip around Australia, because obviously, whilst you have the dog and you can't go to remote places like where I possibly have gone to. But the one thing that is crucial is the communication piece. You need to be able to communicate with each other because you sit on top of each other 24/7. And there is no room and no space for, I'm not going to talk to you because, like in my case, that meant that we potentially weren't going to be safe because we were so far away from civilization so often.
yeah.
And so that was just the ground rule to basically say, well, let's have as much fun as you possibly can, but let's also ensure that whatever happens, there needs to be that piece of communication. There cannot be anything left unsaid, anything that boils to the surface at a later stage. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of get to know each other again on a deeper level, have deeper conversations about the future. What are
Yeah.
your dreams together as you are entering that next phase of your life?
Yeah.
And get that one out of the system, so to say.
Yeah. So it'll be 25 years of being married and 27, 28 of being together. So
Wow.
yeah, I think we've had a good go of it so far.
But I also think that it's important to do that at the stage in life that you're at right now and not wait until retirement, because the amount of couples that I have sort of observed in my parents' friendship group that are heading towards that retirement age, and then suddenly they're like, well, what are we going to do with each other? We don't know each other. What are we going to do with each other? We don't know what to talk about, and we have no separate hobbies.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think taking out time, planning, visualizing, manifesting is very important in a relationship to just strengthen that bond and see where there is a shared vision and where there is
Yeah.
separate visions that you can support each other on
Yeah.
that journey as well. Yeah, so that's
So we'll
absolutely
probably do a
beautiful.
few test runs this year so we can actually do the work on that, I think.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome. That's terrific. Because you've got the van, oh, not the van, but you've got the car, you've got the camper.
Camper.
That's
Yeah.
already all done. You've already done a couple of backyard setups just
We
to
have.
see how it all
Yeah.
feels.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've done we just need to work on getting that little dude into the car. We pull the camper out and he's like, oh, I don't know about this. This is different. I don't know. I don't know about this. It's a hate crime, I reckon he says. It's a hate crime. Anyway,
Oh,
we'll work on that. We've got time. Yeah. So
yeah.
that's and I think the thing that I'm so passionate about is just sharing my love of movement and how movement can heal. It can bring communities together. It just creates, especially with the B class, that beautiful safe place for women to come together, that it's low lighting. And oh, I just can't wait to coordinate that first class in some regional community to pull them all together. And I guess if people are watching this, or even within my community, there's asking my community, do you know people that live in different areas of the country that we can kind of collaborate with? So it's not just me on my own, it's about pulling this collaboration of communities together, both
Yeah.
mine and across. And I'm sure that will actually frame quite a lot of where we go. One of
Yeah.
my other clients has said, oh, I've got people that live in WA. I'll connect you with them so we can pull together. So it'll kind of look like, say, for an example, we might go to Port Lincoln, drive to Port Lincoln. I've got 3 clients that live over there. And see how we can maybe do the B class a couple of times within that week. And then there'll be the not the random live streaming, but the live streaming each day for the virtual community to stream in. But really the main point is to try and get the B class across to more spaces. Might throw in some yoga as well, definitely. And that the community supports me being able to offer that class back to the communities as just a gift. Because I see that B class is the greatest gift that you can give women
Yeah.
is a space and a class that is more than just a dance class. It's more than just fitness. It's all of those things. It's just, It's cathartic. I think for me, having the B class come into my community at Roaming Zen, and there's so many, it was the class and still is the class that is fully booked every week. Um, you know, it is the class that is just missing in the world. And there's only one creator behind this class. Tara's magic is something else, and it definitely is a class to be experienced um, more than just once, a couple of
Yeah.
times over to really go, oh, yeah, this is what
Oh
I've been
yeah,
missing
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which
Exactly.
you know.
Because what was so interesting when the B class came into my life, I was similar to you, hadn't moved for ages, but my body just loves movement. I'm a manifesting generator, so for me, movement in the evening is the best way to dump my excess energy to then have a really restful night and recharge overnight. But when you haven't moved your body in a while and when you haven't been to one of the gyms here in South Australia or in Adelaide, or when you're not part of a community where you can just buddy up with someone and say, I'm just going to join you on something, then there is a little bit of that mental hurdle that exists. And then I was like, well, I wish there was just something that is sort of not just weights, that is not Pilates, that is not yoga, even though I know my body would probably love yoga just to, slow down a little bit as well. But I just wanted something where there was that non-judgmental, empowering, uplifting environment where I could just move freely. And I was saying it in Tara's episode as well. It was also a time when I was trying to really integrate the feminine with the masculine in my body further because, when we're in corporate, we're so much in our masculine energy. And then if you're trying to really drop into the heart, into the flow, into the feminine, into the alignment, that's obviously when you need to start creating those balances. And so that's when the B class found me. And it literally is my medicine. And I literally look forward to every single Tuesday night. I know sometimes I can't make it, but it's one of those things that I really miss if I can't go and if I can't participate, because the people that join the B class are all beautiful people because that's just what the B class attracts. There is no judgment. There is nobody that looks at you sideways if you miss a step. Like I sometimes just make up my own stuff because the choreography just goes out the window. But it also is a movement class that is effective but simple in a way where you don't have to try and remember this whole choreography, where you just get muddled up in your brain.
Yeah.
That's what I really love about it. It's just, it's enough repetition. It's enough sexy moves that you can just, do a little bit of a boogie if you feel like it. You can sing along,
Definitely.
which I do quite often,
Yeah.
and you just leave it feeling uplifted and empowered. Sometimes there's a little quiet to you because, as you say, the lyrics that Tara chooses, I don't know where she gets those songs from. They just get your
Definitely do.
heart. Yeah, so I have totally fallen in love with the class. Anyone who's listening to this, who's in regional, reach out to us. We'll coordinate something. I mean, Riverlands, Clare Valley, Barossa Valley,
Yeah,
that would be a great starting point. I'm sure that some of us
definitely.
would find a good excuse to join you up there
Yes, definitely.
for a weekend as well, if that's
Yeah,
something that is a possibility.
yeah,
But as you say, B class is something that needs to be felt. The energy needs to be felt to know what it is. And what I'm excited about with you taking it on the road is that you will be able to identify future B class leaders
yes, yes.
that can
Yeah.
lead that movement and expand it into the areas that where it's currently not.
Well, that's the only way. I mean, I can't teach across Australia. I can for this first trip, but that's also what it is where, um, what's the word? It escapes me at the moment. Like we're scouting. Oh, that's
Yeah.
my dog. We're scouting. We're on the scout for the next generation of leaders to can continue bringing this beautiful method into their communities, and that's what
Yeah.
it's done in Canada. Across Canada, that's exactly how it's happened.
Yeah.
We're a little bit bigger in Australia, but let's just start for the ripple effect I mean, by June of this year, we'll have it in Gawler, and we'll also have it in Mount Barker and Murray Bridge. So that's really exciting. So that's like the first little part. It's like a little spider web.
The
And so we
first
just
little
need to,
stretch.
yeah, we just need to stretch a little bit further to the valleys.
Yeah.
I've got a connection down in Port Elliot, and a lady who did the class with me on retreat in Bali last year, and she's like, oh my gosh, we need to bring this to my area. So I have some contacts down there. So it'll probably, we'll start South Australia first and then start to widen
Cast
the
out,
web just a
exactly.
while. Yeah.
Now, I've asked Tara about the type of people that have the potential to become B class leaders. So we talked a little bit about the characteristics, but do you think that a B class leader could also be someone who has a day job and then decides to do this for evening classes for the community if that's not something that they can lean into full time?
Yeah. Oh, of course. Well, Vienna, who brought it to Roaming Zen, she works full time in her industry, and so she has her one class a week. Lexi, that leads it at Crafers, same thing. She works full time for an airline, and she has her one class a
Wow.
week. So it's and a lot of the women in Canada, same kind of thing. So it becomes their passion project. It becomes their highlight for the week, which is where they're contributing back, and they're definitely generating an income from it, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the other thing that I love about the B class. If we focus on, or any, and this kind of leans into your business as well. But the thing I love particularly about the B class, it's about bringing people together, and that is your focus, not what I'm not even trying to say.
Yeah.
So it's about building the community around the class and around the brand, and then the remuneration takes care of
The
itself.
rest will follow. That's
The rest
exactly right.
definitely will follow. There's a
Yeah.
book written in the 70s, Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. So, yes, there's some wisdom in that one.
Yeah.
But focus on what your passion is, focus on building the community and the connection. And I see that in Woodside. We started off back in September 23 with only 3 women. And now we have a group that come in and drop in and out of the class of around 25 to 30 women now. And that all just built by word of mouth and showing up and showing up. And the curious thing with Woodside is we don't have a booking system. I just send the whole 35 of them a message every week saying, I'm showing up this week. Who's with me?
Wow.
And then some nights they'll just keep walking in and walking in. Oh, I was able to get away from the kids walking in. And so I'm like, almost like to the point we need to find a bigger space for that class. But that wasn't pushing the sales. That was pushing the passion. Not
Well,
even
that's
pushing the
magnetism.
passion. Yeah.
No, it's magnetism, and
Yeah.
that's obviously what I'm all about. Is when you drop into that alignment and when you drop into your human design, sales is not sales anymore. It's just you being of service in the way that is most aligned to who you are. And that's how you obviously attract the beautiful people into your life. And so I think, for anyone who is now potentially excited about learning more about the B class, where it's like it's ignited this little spark in their body, trust what your body is telling you. And, with you, I know that whatever you develop and whichever leaders you are taking under your wing, it's not just that you're going to teach them the method. They will have access to you and your community, and you'll be able to hold space for them, for their personal development, for their growth, because that is the path that you have walked
Yeah.
over the course of your life. And so you can now pass that on, and you can now create that ripple effect without you having to be the person that does it all. And that is so beautiful to see.
Yeah. And that's ultimately isn't that what we're all here on this earth to do, is to pass on
Yes.
our gifts, our medicine, There's a beautiful meditation that I do often, which is called Trust, with Elena Bauer, who's another beautiful yoga teacher I've followed for a long time. And I often use some of her words at the end of yoga, where it's just, or even in the B classes, just trust what you know. Trust that your medicine, your art, your gift, what you're here on this earth to contribute is needed. Because it is,
Yeah.
as long as it's from here.
Doesn't mean that it's not sometimes scary and that we're not squeaking in our boots when we're
Yeah,
trying to honor
yeah,
that call. But
yeah,
yeah, there is something liberating and freeing and joyous in following what your heart wants you to do.
yeah, yeah. And so, and to do that, we have to. Had just journaled about it this morning. Is it's being present in that moment and recognizing that if it doesn't sit right here, it's not going to sit right here. Oh, there's a B class song about that, My Head and My Heart.
Oh, yes, I love that one too. We should,
Caught
if
in
it's allowed,
between.
we should
Yeah.
try and put a couple of the songs into the show notes as well, that people can
Oh,
just close
listen
their
to.
eyes and just
Yeah.
feel the energy behind some of those songs in their
Mm.
own time and maybe even do some intuitive movement around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pop a little list together so you can so we can share it in the show notes of just some of the ones that have really spoken to me the most. So don't be so hard on yourself. Jess Glynn was the song that I'm like, we need this from my studio.
Yeah.
And that was the one that brought me to tears straight away. My head and my heart are torn in between. That lyric, that's Ava Max, I think.
Yeah.
But yes, there's lots and lots of them. Just like fire, Pink, amazing.
Yes, yes.
And the movement that
Power. I
does.
love the power one where we
Oh
throw
yes.
that energetic ball into, the side. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites as well.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I have now created my own personal empowerment
Uh,
list
uh-huh.
where if I have, a podcast recording or if I have an
Right.
appointment somewhere where I just need that little bit of extra energy and that little bit of prep talk,
Uh-huh.
that's the list that I have blaring in my car. I'm singing the tunes, and then whatever I'm walking into
Uh-huh.
just again comes with a very different energy because it takes me to the class as well, and it takes me to
Yes.
that safe space that you create there, which is so beautiful.
Yeah. I love it when people send me a little love note and they say, Jenny, I just want you to know that I'm so pleased that you played the champion, like we did the champion routine, because now I've got a big corporate meeting I've got to walk into, and that song just reminded me to be unbreakable, unstoppable, unshakable, and like you can knock me down, but I'll get up again, and that I'm a
Exactly.
champion. And so that almost becomes a mantra when she's walking into a meeting. Now, where else do you go and do a dance class where there is that full somatic experience based on music that's got this amazing, powerful message, and it comes out in your body, and then you feel it in your guts, and you're like, yeah,
I can do it.
I can do it. And that's the power. That is the absolute power of the class. When some folks say to me, oh, it's just a dance cardio class, I'm like,
Nah. You've missed
no.
the point. You're in your head, you're not in your heart, and
Yeah,
you're not in your body.
exactly. Yeah, come back again for the next one. But then I'm
Yeah.
also really mindful of reading that audience too, and not going so far into what can commonly be called the woohoo, because, you know, that we have this kind of saying that is that perhaps some folk are not, they're just not in that, it's not the right time
Yet.
for them, and not the right time for them yet. But then again, they come back and they go, oh gosh, those songs are so good. Maybe I'll give it another go. And just in the class I taught on Saturday, there was a few folk that were on the wait list, but just turned up, misinterpreting what the wait list was all about. And I'm like, well, come on in. How can I say no? And at the end of the class, so like we had lots of us in this space, which was really cool. And at the end of the class, the ladies that turned up that were on the wait list. One lady wasn't even booked in. She just turned up. It was fine. And the lady who was really genuinely thankful, she said, "Oh my gosh, I so needed that class. If you turned me around, it just would have been the worst things. But now I actually feel like I can navigate anything today. So
Yeah.
thank you."
Yeah.
And that is about being customer focused. That's about being human focused and
Yeah.
recognizing it's like, well, just make a plan. Just make a plan. In my head, it's like, come on in. Come on in. We'll just make this work. And it did
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Ah.
Mm.
Well, I think you and we could talk for days.
Oh, we totally could. Yeah.
And I'm sure that we're going to record another podcast episode at some stage to start, tuning into this whole road trip and perhaps get some more people from our community together and on board for this great cause and for this great project that you have. So who knows, maybe I'm going to tune in with you from wherever you are around the country.
Yes.
Can you give us some closing words, some closing inspiration, some reflections, whatever you want to leave the audience with today?
Um, I think I'm going to finish with and I'm going to just, rely on what my friend Jerry has put together for me. I think at the heart of everything that we do and the heart of Roaming Zen, it's just about us all being able to share our goal, to share our medicine with the rest of the world. For me, at now the age of, I'm nearing the end of my 53rd year on this planet, is to, if there's something that you're really, really passionate about in your life, share it. Share it. Share your light. Don't let anyone ever dim your light. And if your light does go dim, light a match, burn the stick, and then pull that light back into your
Light it
heart
back up.
again. And keep reminding yourself and others that it's never too late to say yes to what brings you joy. And just go and do it. And I'm so grateful for the people around me, people such as yourself and my family and my community for staying by me and believing in me. And for believing in me and what I can do, particularly in those times when I didn't think that I could. And I'm just so incredibly grateful for that. So thank you.
And thank you for saying yes to the opportunities that have come your way, because otherwise we would have been missing out on one of the greatest movement classes that there is.
Yes.
And I mean that from the heart. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for leaning into the uncomfortable spaces. And thank you for sharing your gift with the world.
Oh, thanks so much, Alice. Thank you. Much
All
gratitude to everyone that's got this far on the podcast. We might have to do a speed of 10 times.
That's okay. That's okay. People can listen to this in stages. That's what I
Yes.
sometimes do with longer
Yeah.
podcasts. I just, whenever I get ready in the morning, I just listen to that over a course of a couple of days. Now, if you have discovered the beat class through this podcast, do me a favor, go up to Jeni, tell her when you are attending a class to say, this is where the inspiration came from. That would mean a lot. And it would mean that, the message that we share as well is getting to where it needs to be. So thank you so much for today. And until the
See you
next podcast
soon.
episode. Exactly. Ciao,
And I'll
ciao.
see you at class next week if you're around.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will.
Bye.